Tips from Trestle is brought to you by eMenu Choice Point of Sale, Bizox AI, and Clark Pro. Welcome to Tips from Trestle, the senior living food and hospitality podcast. This podcast explores the senior living industry with a unique focus on food, hospitality, and the community experience. I'm your host, Aaron Fish. My goal for this podcast: educate, inform, and inspire leaders in senior living. How? By bringing the resident and customer experience to the front of mind in our industry. We should bring the passionate spirit of food and hospitality to everything that we do and everyone we serve each and every day. So what are we waiting for? Let's get to it. Welcome to Tips from Trestle. Today, I am thrilled to introduce Sara Mitchell, a dynamic leader and marketing expert with over a decade of experience across communications, sports, senior living, and nonprofit sectors. As the co-founder and president of Solinity Marketing, Sara spearheads innovative strategies to amplify brands in the senior living and healthcare industries. As part of her leadership at Solinity, she's the executive producer of the Bridge the Gap, the Senior Living Podcast, an industry-leading network shaping the future of senior housing and services. With a passion for storytelling, team development, and advocacy for aging populations, Sara is here to share her insights on marketing, leadership, and making a meaningful impact. Sara, thanks for joining me today on Tips from Trestle.
Oh, thanks, Aaron. I'm so excited about this conversation.
Yeah, it should be a lot of fun. But before we get into talking marketing and culinary and dining, I gotta have you tell at least a little bit about your journey to senior living, because you were a sports reporter at one point in your career. So how did you wind up in the senior living space?
That's an awesome question. It's funny when I hear you say that series of events from sports to senior living and nonprofit sectors. The journey is interesting. I mean, I could give you the whole story and it's pretty wild, but the most simplified version is I started out in athletics and sports on communications and journalism. I was a sideline reporter for football, men's and women's basketball primarily. I got a sweet opportunity to go over to ESPN that then became the SEC network. I was at the University of Tennessee at Knoxville, so my first job was covering the Tennessee Volunteers and had a pretty cool runway there, have a lot of great memories. And during that time at UT, I had the privilege of working with NCAA legend Pat Summitt, who's the women's basketball coach. And as you know, she had a very public battle with early onset dementia. And at that time, I didn't know that much about Alzheimer's and even really cognitive decline, if you will, because it wasn't really relevant in my family. And thank goodness for that. But I learned a lot. Fast forward a lot of different things. I had an opportunity to be a part of a charity cycling event that is now a nonprofit in honor of Coach Summitt. It's called Pedal for Alzheimer's. And that was my entry into senior living. I was part of a startup operations group who needed a communications director. So I came on. The core of who I am and what I love to do is tell stories. And I found quickly, as you know, that there's a lot of great stories in the senior living industry. So here we are, fast forwarded to a full service PR and marketing agency. And this is what I do day in and day out.
That's such a great journey. And the evolution, as you talk about it, again, I said it was different, but it really, the theme is the same, right? You find senior living and you realize that, hey, there's a lot here and this is something that I can do, have a passion for, but also can take my skill set and really flex it. So it's a very cool story. So the reason I wanted to visit with you was I wanted to talk about how marketing and dining and the culinary experience for residents, how all of that can kind of come together. Because from my vantage point, at least, I think there's so many operators that maybe miss the opportunity or miss the mark when it comes to using food or that dining experience in their marketing stuff. And so when you think about this idea of culinary excellence, how can that be a key marketing strategy for communities?
It's really critical. It's an easy thing to market if you have a great program. And what we've uncovered and discovered from a lot of operators and even standalone communities who may be more regional based, food is one of the key complaints if it's not good. And it's one of the
Yeah.
things most talked about if it is good. And so from a sales and marketing standpoint, the way that we help operators and community leaders through that journey of figuring out what is our marketing strategy, what are the great culture components, the great people that we have, the great stories in our community. A lot of times, an easy default is let's talk about our culinary program. If we have great food, if we have great programming for hospitality, by all means, let's talk about it because it's one of the important things. And as you know, as residents age, food is part of the fabric of core memories, and it's part of the fabric of soul food and comfort food and all of those things. And so, when a community does a great job at their culinary excellence, one of the things that we tap into is let's talk about it. Not only just showcasing a menu or the culinary director or the other team members, but let's get the residents to talk about it. What better way for a seeking family who's looking and searching for senior living, what better way to help tell the story of a community than what's around the table and what are those social components? What do the residents say about the food? What does it look like? What does it smell like? What does it taste like? And then if they see that on Facebook and then have their tour of the community, they get to see that firsthand. So it's critical. It's really important and it's pretty easy as long as you're doing a great job back in the kitchen in the culinary space.
I do think that's key, right? You can't be doing it so because then it doesn't necessarily come across well. But if you're doing a really good job, I mean, it feels like it's low hanging fruit to to share the stories about all that. When you think about how the communities you work with are looking to kind of shape their perception of what they do, what they offer, how do things like the unique dining experiences, like having different outlets and different offerings, or even the different care levels, maybe, how do those things become a part of how they build that perception around their community?
Absolutely. Well, you said it there. The care levels make a really big difference because that changes the audience. So if you're looking at a CCRC that has the continuum of care, then marketing towards those independent living apartments and those residents who might be looking themselves. It might be a future resident that's seeking marketing information. Versus on the other end of the acuity is a memory care resident. That's typically it's going to be your adult son and daughter who's looking and trying to gain information because they've just received a diagnosis or their loved one has progressed so much that memory care community setting is needed. And so I think the reality of that food is different. An independent living resident eats different, socializes differently, has different programming and different approaches than a memory care resident. And so a lot of the tools or processes that we help take clients and communities through is all right, what is the reality of the food? And yes, there might be specialty diets and health components on maybe more of a memory care menu, but we can still tell the story of food and hospitality in a light and in a manner that's still attractive and is welcoming to resident families so that they know mom and dad or my loved one, they're still getting the foods that they enjoy and they recognize and they know, but it's in the best format and the best way that they can. And so, from a marketing perspective, it's really tapping into who is the person that's looking for the information, who's actually seeking the information about our community, and let's talk to them. If you're in the South, that marketing looks really different because we're, as you know, we're going to have biscuits and gravy, right? For
Right.
breakfast. But, the North looks different and the coast looks different. So it's looking in uncovering those special components about not only the care level and the level of care needed, but also how that hospitality and dining and culinary experience plays into what that resident needs.
One of the things that makes me curious about is when you have a different audience for each care level, and I have to tell a story, right? You can't just put up a pretty plate of food and call it marketing. Is there a different way you go about telling those stories? Do you try to find different angles, or do you do a similar approach to each, just knowing that the audience is different? I guess I'm curious about how the story comes about when you look at those different care levels.
Technology continues to drive changes in senior care, and that includes food service. eMenu Choice is an award-winning point-of-service application for managing the dining function in senior living communities. This mobile, touchscreen-enabled software enhances the dining experience for residents while streamlining processes for staff. The flexibility and functionality of eMenu Choice makes it an effective solution for any type of senior living environment, from independent and assisted living to skilled nursing facilities. It works for production kitchens or restaurant-style service with options for per meal or a la carte pricing, and accommodates a variety of payments, including bill to account, meal credits, and credit cards. Created by a senior care provider with more than a century of experience serving older adults, eMenu Choice eliminates communication barriers between staff and residents while enabling person-centered choices and greater resident satisfaction. eMenu Choice, transforming dining for senior living.
Well, we believe that the best people to tell the story about what they're eating is the residents themselves. And so oftentimes that looks like, hey, could we have a half day or a full day at your community to set up a couple of cameras? Let's do a content shoot, getting real life residents telling their reality and their story. Now, you may get some of the most off the wall, hilarious comments, and they may comment that the shrimp is terrible, but everything else is wonderful. So, piecing together those stories to get the laughter and the reality, but also coming straight from the residents is most ideal. And sometimes it's a content shoot is not in a budget for a community, so no problem. If there's an activities director or a marketing director that's there in the community, there's easy tools and tricks like get an iPhone tripod and let's get a resident seated at the table doing a walkthrough of what's on their plate. So there's all kinds of tools and processes like that. But I would say the root of that is let's get the residents telling the story. We can package that up nicely, whether that's in photo form or video form or written testimonial reviews and things like that. But residents are key.
I love the thread of storytelling, right? Because like you said at the beginning, like I think about all the memories I have with my family, or usually there's some sort of cooking or meal that's happened. But you did mention the concern that a community may have about doing that. I'm going to get some negative feedback or negative input. How would you tell them why they should ignore that fear and just let it happen?
Probably because you're gonna get some hilarious laughs. And I mean, we all know that residents in these communities, they all have unique stories. They all have different backgrounds. I would say doing a little bit of research. Perhaps there's someone that lives in your community that does have some really special core memory of baking or cooking with their children or their grandchildren. So tying into that and asking more questions about their story that then opens the doors for some questions. So I'd say questions are key. So knowing a little bit of a story and then asking those probing questions that gets them talking. And then also I would say people in general have feedback. You and I have feedback at a restaurant on the service, on the quality of food, on what your experience was. And so I think a little bit of that is bringing in reality of I don't like this meal, but they do this the best. And so filtering through that, I would certainly say don't push live on this video because we don't know what your residents will say. But filtering through some of that and pulling out obviously the best, most realistic spotlights of your community and certainly leveraging the good and the bad to beautifully display that story.
For me, by doing that, you're still going to get that authenticity from
Mhm.
the resident. And even the most upset resident about whatever might be will probably have at least one or two good things to say, I would think. And so you can definitely showcase that for them. So we've been talking about storytelling, right? And kind of how to go about doing that and looking at your program. I'm curious to get maybe a little bit more tactical. Right now, obviously, video is king. People want to see those short clips and want to see what life is really like in a community. So when you think about dining and the culinary experience and things that happen around food, What are some strategies that different communities and operators can use? How can they integrate the dining experience in all of that?
Yeah, again, I'll say it's critical and it's important. It's a really big part of someone's day. I mean, you think about all of the time that we spend cooking, eating, cleaning up. And so if we do that, let's call it 3 times a day, there's so much opportunity to help tell those stories. So I'd say a couple of different strategies. Obviously depends on care level. It depends on the people that you have there in the communities to actively help capture those stories. And then I would say it's things like incorporating the social component. And we talked about this before we hit record. There's a huge social component to food. And oftentimes there is a memory or an experience that is associated with food. So when each of these different parties and players and residents and families can come together around the table, it creates a photo, a video, or some sort of response. So think about it even with reviews. So oftentimes we help communities with even little printed QR codes where it makes it easy for a family to click a button on their phone, pull up the QR code, and then leave a review. Some probing questions might be, hey, we know that your mom or dad or your loved one loves the desserts at our community, or they love the cocktail hours, or the whatever it is, fill in the blank. Asking your families to leave a review, because families who are looking at reviews. And so social media reviews are huge. So asking your happy families and your happy residents to write a review and giving them that prompt, hey, would you mind talking about our hospitality program? Or we know XYZ loves dinner at night. So giving those. And then open houses. So we talk about events
Yeah.
a lot. Now that communities are back open and tours are happening, getting families and tours around the table is a really important time. It's time when people talk, you kind of let your hair down, there's discovery to be made. And so a lot of times in many communities, you'll see a sales tour that has some stop in the dining room and there's coffee, maybe it's warm cookies, and creating those experiences, again, that tie people back to, oh, we had coffee and a cookie at that community, and it was really special because the cookie was warm. So pulling in some of those things that communities are already practicing and already doing, capturing that on video or photo, and then sharing that online via email, website, and all of those different places.
Kind of in a similar vein, the you mentioned the everyday activities, and I feel like at least with some of the clients I've worked with and some of the operators I've worked for in the past, sometimes trying to capture those everyday experiences is completely overlooked. It's like, we're gonna do this big photo shoot, we're gonna do this big video, it's like it has to be a production. And so what is the value, I guess, for someone to maybe take this approach of, I won't call it low budget, but I'm gonna grab my iPhone with the 4K video camera and I'm gonna shoot this thing happening, as opposed to bringing a big group in to do a big shoot.
Yeah, I would say both and. If there's a budget for both, let's plan both. With
Yeah.
the everyday events that happen, though, don't let it be a missed opportunity. So we coach and we train and do a lot of workshops on, so with a community, out of the things that you are already doing, you already have an activities calendar, you already have a dining calendar, and oftentimes those things intersect. So if we take, for example, a Valentine's Day dinner, and there's maybe a red rose that's on the table. Well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about the social connectivity that the residents get to experience. Maybe the doors are open for families to come in. That's even yet another piece of the story. I would say one of the key and critical agenda items is for that certain person who's in charge of the camera at the community, whether it's activities or administrator, executive director, to make a point, get a task on your calendar, a reminder or alarm going off, to don't let this night or this day or this event pass without capturing something that the social media team or the marketing team can share, because it's those everyday events that really make up the lifeblood of the communities. It's the things that the residents can attend and are invited to, and it's the things that they talk about, and it's that social piece. It's connecting sales, it's connecting marketing, it's connecting food. and the love of being together. So I would say set a reminder, don't let those things pass without snapping a good photo on your iPhone.
Yeah, all great advice. And so, as we kind of wrap up here, one of the things that you, as we were getting ready to record, you had brought up was the way departments in the community can specifically kind of leverage the food and hospitality programming to better showcase the community and market the community. And so, what are some thoughts you have around what the different departments can do in that regard?
Sure. Well, we hear this loud and clear from a lot of operators, and we see it firsthand that there's a really big disconnect in some cases between sales and marketing and the activities calendar and what's happening with culinary. But in reality, they all should be working together. And there's a couple of different approaches to that. So, number one, if I bring up the whole social component, if the resident is the one that we're creating all of these experiences for, how do we bring them together, incorporating either activity and or food and hospitality in that programming that we talk about? Then how do we give that to marketing to showcase and promote? And then sales uses that as part of their tour or part of their explanation of the community or examples for residents to be a part of that experience. So, for example, there might be a resident ambassador, or it could be the chairman of the council, or whatever it's named in that community. So, where those individuals that are living day in and day out in your community have some responsibility or some opportunity to tell their story firsthand. So think about it on a scheduled tour to where you might visit the gym and then you're going to stop by the dining room and then you might just knock on the door of, Miss Sally, and Miss Sally knows her prompt is, let's talk about the Valentine's Day event. I keep using that 'cause it's coming up here. But, those examples that there's some sort of crossover between what the programming and hospitality is doing. You're leveraging the food, you're leveraging the experience there, and then sales and marketing teams can cohesively use that. And it's this big funnel that goes back to how do we tell the stories, get the people to fill out a form online, send a message online, come in for a tour, see firsthand what they've seen online via marketing, and then they have a firsthand experience and testimonial from either a team member, a resident, or someone else who can put their stamp of approval that all of these things are working together and it really is the reality of a beautiful community setting.
Yeah, so very true. So, well, Sarah, this has been great. I love the storytelling narrative and the way you feel it's so important that all of it needs to be a part of it and how everything needs to be intertwined. So, before I let you go, please share with the listeners how they can reach out to work with Solinity or follow you on social media and how they can connect.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, easy to find us. So it's solinitymarketing.com. Solinity is spelled Solinity. We're also on all the social media channels. You can find me on LinkedIn. We would love to connect. We serve the senior living and healthcare industry only on the B2C and the B2B side, and we're here to stay. So it's very exciting.
Very cool. Well, Sarah, thanks again for taking the time and for being a guest here on Tips from Trestle.
Thanks, Aaron. This was great.
So there it is, everybody. Another one in the books. Thanks again for tuning in. Please follow, like, and subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts. And be sure to follow us on social media at Tips from Trestle. You can also learn more about the work I do by following me on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, and even TikTok. And be sure to check out Trestle Hospitality Concepts at www.trestlehospitalityconcepts.com. I'm your host, Aaron Fish, and this has been another episode of Tips from Trestle.